This is another edition of My Burbank News.
Hello, Burbank. Craig Stewart here with you once again. And today we're going to dive into, should Burbank become a sanctuary city or not? The City Council will be taking this up on Tuesday night at their meeting, and it'll be interesting to see which direction they go. With the threat of federal funding for our airport or other types of funding that could be frozen by the government compared to the rights of immigrants. So we asked our friends at Notebook LM to weigh in on the matter. They reviewed all the city reports, and let's see what they have to say.
Ready to dive into something that's got everyone in Burbank buzzing?
Yeah.
It's the question on everyone's minds. What happens if Burbank actually becomes a so-called sanctuary city?
Right.
We've got stacks of reports, policies, serious warnings, even from the federal government. This is about your city, your life, and potentially even your wallet.
Absolutely. It is a complex web, for sure.
Yeah.
We're talking immigration law, local government, and the future of those Burbank projects you've been hearing about.
Right.
We'll try and untangle it all and see what it really means for you in Burbank.
Okay, so first things first. Is Burbank already a sanctuary city?
Well, technically, no.
Okay.
But here's where it gets interesting. Burbank has to follow California state law.
Right.
Specifically, the California Values Act.
Okay.
Think of it kind of like sanctuary light for the whole state. It puts limits on how much Burbank police can work with federal immigration authorities.
So give me an example. Like if you're a Burbank police officer and you pull someone over for speeding, can you ask about their immigration status?
Nope. Not under the California Values Act.
Okay.
And you can't hold someone just because ICE calls and asks you to.
Right.
There are very specific rules, mostly about serious or violent crimes.
Yeah.
But in many everyday situations, Burbank police have their hands tied when it comes to immigration enforcement.
Okay, so they're already following some of these sanctuary rules then. What would actually change if Burbank went all the way and officially declared themselves a sanctuary city?
Right.
Would it just be symbolic?
Yeah, that's the debate.
Okay.
Some say it's about sending a message, Burbank welcomes immigrants. Others argue that it could have real-world consequences.
Okay.
Imagine someone who's undocumented, witnessing a crime.
Right.
In a sanctuary city, they might feel more comfortable going to the police.
Interesting.
Or a family needing health care or other city services.
Right.
They might be more likely to access them without that fear.
So potential benefits for Burbank residents. But I bet there are some serious downsides too, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about the federal government and money.
You hit the nail on the head. The big one is federal funding.
Yeah.
We're talking about millions of dollars that Burbank relies on. And President Trump has made it very clear. He wants to cut off funding to sanctuary cities.
Right.
He even has a new executive order and a Justice Department memo to back it up.
Wow. This is starting to feel like we're in a legal thriller here.
Absolutely.
Give me the numbers. How much money are we talking about?
The City Council report lays it out. Over $30 million in active federal funds.
Wow.
That's money for things like affordable housing programs,
Okay.
keeping your water clean, even those road repairs everyone's been complaining about.
Yeah.
And they're hoping to get even more money for those big projects, like replacing the Olive Avenue Bridge.
Yeah.
Imagine that project stalling because the money dries up.
Okay, so we're not just talking about hypothetical risks here. This could have a direct impact on Burbank residents' lives.
Absolutely.
So is Burbank really willing to risk financial ruin just to make a political statement?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a balancing act. On the one hand, you have the potential benefits of becoming a sanctuary city,
Yeah.
a more inclusive community, greater trust between residents and local government.
Right.
But on the other hand, you have this looming threat of losing crucial federal dollars.
And it sounds like the feds are turning up the heat with these new directives from the Trump administration.
Absolutely.
What are the chances that Burbank actually loses that funding?
It's a real possibility.
Oh, good.
Department of Justice is actively investigating local officials who don't fully cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. They're serious about this. And there's even a letter from America First Legal, the conservative legal group, specifically warning Burbank about potential lawsuits and personal liability for city leaders.
Yikes. So Burbank officials could end up in court or worse.
It's a high-stakes game. No doubt, Burbank is trying to navigate this complicated web of state and federal laws with a lot of money and potentially even people's freedom hanging in the balance.
Okay, this is heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So Burbank is stuck between a rock and a hard place,
Yeah.
trying to do what's right for their community while facing serious pressure from the federal government.
Right.
But let's get down to brass tacks.
Mm-hmm.
How would this sanctuary city thing actually work in Burbank?
Right.
What would change in people's everyday lives?
Well, remember that California Values Act we talked about?
Yeah.
Burbank police are already limited in how they interact with ICE. They can't just ask about someone's immigration status during a routine traffic stop.
Right.
Or arrest them solely on an ICE request.
Okay.
But there are some gray areas,
Oh.
particularly when it comes to people who have been convicted of crimes.
Okay. So spill the tea. What are those gray areas?
Okay.
And how would becoming a sanctuary city affect them?
Right now, Burbank police can notify ICE before releasing someone from custody if they meet certain criteria.
Okay.
For example, if they've been convicted of a serious or violent felony.
So if Burbank becomes a sanctuary city, they might not be able to do that anymore,
Yeah,
even if someone is a dangerous criminal.
that's the core of the debate.
Okay.
And it's not just about police interactions.
Mm-hmm.
A sanctuary city declaration could also impact things like access to city services,
Right.
employment practices, and even housing policies.
Hold on. This is where it gets really interesting.
Right.
Because it starts to touch on the lives of everyday Burbank residents,
Right.
not just those who might be undocumented.
Uh-huh.
I'm hooked. We need to unpack this more.
You got it. There's the symbolic aspect of creating a welcoming and inclusive environment,
Right.
but there are also very real practical considerations, like
Yeah.
whether a sanctuary city policy could make it harder for federal authorities to remove dangerous criminals from the community.
Okay. I can see how this issue has so many layers, and I'm sure there are valid arguments on both sides.
Absolutely.
But before we get too deep into the weeds, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Where did this whole sanctuary city thing come from?
Well, the movement actually has roots going back decades,
Oh,
with cities like San Francisco declaring themselves sanctuaries for Central American refugees fleeing civil wars in the 1980s.
Okay.
But it really gained momentum in the 2000s with the rise of anti-immigrant sentiment and stricter federal enforcement policies.
So it's been this constant back and forth between local governments trying to protect their communities
Right.
and the federal government trying to assert its authority on immigration.
Exactly.
And now Burbank's caught right in the middle of this tug of war.
Right. And the legal landscape is constantly shifting with court rulings,
Yeah.
executive orders, and even changes in presidential administrations.
Mhm.
That's what makes this issue so complex and constantly evolving.
Okay, so Burbank is facing a tough choice with potentially huge consequences for everyone who lives there. We need to break this down even further
Absolutely.
and see what's at stake for Burbank residents, businesses, and the city itself.
Right. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve into the potential economic impacts of Burbank becoming a sanctuary city.
Okay.
Will it lead to a boom or a bust? Will businesses flee, or will new opportunities arise?
I'm already on the edge of my seat. Stay tuned, folks. We're just getting started. Welcome back to our deep dive into what a sanctuary city could mean for Burbank. We've talked about the legal hot water and the political pressure, but now let's get down to dollars and cents.
Right, because this decision could have a real impact on Burbank's bottom line. And yours, too.
Yeah.
We need to look at how it could affect businesses, jobs, and even things like what you pay for groceries.
Okay, so no more abstract legal stuff.
Right.
Let's talk about real-world consequences.
Exactly.
What are the biggest economic factors at play here?
Well, first we need to understand the role of immigrants in Burbank's economy.
Okay.
Think about all those industries we have here. Entertainment, tourism, restaurants, construction.
Right.
Immigrants play a big role in many of them.
Right. Burbank isn't just Hollywood studios. There are tons of small businesses, too.
Yeah.
How would they be affected?
That's a key question. Imagine a restaurant owner who relies on undocumented workers in the kitchen.
Okay.
If they suddenly feel unsafe or uncertain about their future, what happens?
Yeah.
Maybe they leave Burbank altogether. Or maybe they just become less productive.
Right.
Either way, it could mean higher costs for that restaurant owner, which could mean higher prices on your menu.
So it's not just about politics.
Right.
It's about the price of that burger you're craving.
Exactly.
This is hitting home.
And it's not just restaurants. Think about construction workers, hotel staff, landscapers.
Yeah.
All industries that rely heavily on immigrant labor.
Right.
If there's a labor shortage, those businesses might have to pay more to attract workers.
Right.
And those costs get passed on to you, the consumer.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could ripple through the entire local economy.
Yeah.
But some folks might say, hey, if those undocumented workers leave, more jobs will open up for American citizens. What's wrong with that logic?
It's not that simple. Sometimes those jobs require specific skills or experience.
Right.
And there might not be enough qualified American workers available.
Yeah.
Plus, we have to remember that undocumented immigrants are also consumers. They rent apartments, they buy groceries, they go to the movies.
Yeah.
All of that contributes to the local economy.
So if they leave Burbank, or even if they just start spending less because they're afraid,
Right.
that's money that's no longer circulating in the local economy.
Precisely. It's a domino effect. Less spending means less revenue for businesses,
Yeah.
which could lead to layoffs or even closures. And that hurts everyone, not just immigrants.
Okay, so we've got potential impacts on businesses, jobs, and even the prices we pay for goods and services. But what about the city itself?
Right.
Didn't we talk about those big infrastructure projects that rely on federal funding?
Right. Remember that Olive Avenue bridge we talked about?
Yeah.
Burbank is hoping to get millions of dollars from the federal government to replace it.
Right.
But if they become a sanctuary city, that funding could be in jeopardy.
So that bridge might literally crumble because of this decision.
It's a real possibility.
That's a scary thought.
And it's not just about infrastructure projects. Burbank relies on federal funding for all sorts of things, from affordable housing programs to public safety initiatives.
So becoming a sanctuary city could mean fewer resources for everyone in Burbank.
It's a difficult trade-off, and it's one that the city council will have to weigh very carefully.
Right.
But there's another side to this coin, too.
Okay.
Some argue that a sanctuary city policy could actually have positive economic effects in the long run.
Okay. I'm listening.
Yeah.
Tell me more about these potential benefits.
One argument is that sanctuary cities attract and retain a more diverse workforce,
Okay.
which can lead to greater innovation and economic growth. Think about Silicon Valley. It's a magnet for talent from all over the world.
Right.
And that's a big part of what makes it such an economic powerhouse.
So the idea is that if Burbank is seen as a welcoming and inclusive city, it could attract more skilled workers and entrepreneurs.
Exactly. And some studies have shown that sanctuary cities tend to have higher wages and lower unemployment rates
Interesting.
than cities with more restrictive immigration policies.
So it's possible that by being more welcoming to immigrants, Burbank could actually boost its economy in the long run.
It's definitely a possibility, and it's something that the city council will have to consider as they weigh the costs and benefits of this decision. But even if there are long-term benefits, there's no denying that there could be some short-term pain, especially if the federal government makes good on its threats to withhold funding.
Okay, so it sounds like this is a gamble with potentially high stakes.
Yeah.
How can we get a better sense of what the real economic impacts might be?
Right.
Are there other cities that have already gone down this road that we can learn from?
That's a great question. One city that's often cited is San Francisco.
Okay.
They've been a sanctuary city for decades, and their economy is booming.
But isn't San Francisco a special case?
Right.
They've got Silicon Valley right there, and they're already a major tourist destination.
You're right. It's hard to compare apples to oranges.
Yeah.
But it is worth noting that San Francisco has continued to thrive economically despite its sanctuary status.
Okay.
And there are other examples of cities that have adopted sanctuary policies without experiencing major economic downturns.
So there's no clear consensus on whether this will be an economic boon or a disaster for Burbank.
Right.
Sounds like there are valid arguments on both sides.
Exactly. It's a complex issue with a lot of uncertainty.
Right.
The economic impact will depend on a lot of factors, including the specific policies Burbank adopts, how the federal government responds, and how businesses and consumers react.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential impact on businesses, jobs, prices, and even city services. But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to examine.
Okay.
The legal battle that's raging over sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
What are the legal risks that Burbank faces if they decide to defy the federal government?
That's a crucial question, because this is not just a political debate. It's a legal minefield.
Right.
We're talking about potential lawsuits, loss of federal funding, and even personal liability for city officials.
This is where it gets real. We need to unpack those legal risks and see what Burbank could be up against. Welcome back. We've been trying to untangle this whole sanctuary city situation in Burbank, and honestly, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Potential economic fallout, strong opinions on both sides, and now we're adding a legal showdown into the mix.
Right.
This is giving me whiplash.
It is a lot to unpack, for sure. And this legal battle, it isn't just about Burbank.
Right.
It's about a fundamental tension in American politics.
Right.
This power struggle between the federal government and individual states.
Right, we see this all the time.
Yeah.
Environmental regulations, healthcare, even education.
Yeah.
Everyone's got an opinion on who should be calling the shots.
Exactly. And when it comes to immigration, the stakes are even higher.
Right.
The core question is, does the federal government have the right to dictate immigration policy?
Yeah.
Or do states and cities have the autonomy to make their own decisions?
It's like a political tug-of-war.
Yeah.
And Burbank's right in the middle.
Yeah.
So where do things stand legally?
Right.
Can the feds really force Burbank to cooperate with ICE, even if they don't want to?
Well, the Trump administration is certainly trying.
Okay.
They're arguing that sanctuary cities are breaking federal law by obstructing immigration enforcement.
Okay.
Their main weapon is the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, which basically says that federal law trumps state law when there's a conflict.
So the feds are saying, we're in charge here, and you have to follow our rules even if you don't like them?
That's the gist of it.
Yeah.
They're also using a specific federal law called Section 1373, which prohibits local governments from stopping their employees, like police officers, from sharing information about someone's immigration status with ICE.
So if Burbank tells its police officers, don't you dare talk to ICE,
right,
they could be breaking federal law.
That's the argument the Trump administration is making.
Okay.
And they're not just talking tough. They've already filed lawsuits against other sanctuary cities and threatened to cut off their funding.
Yikes. This is serious business.
But California is not exactly known for backing down from a fight.
Right.
What's their legal strategy for defending sanctuary cities?
Well, California is firing back with a few constitutional arguments of its own.
Okay.
They're leaning heavily on the 10th Amendment,
Okay.
which says that any powers not specifically given to the federal government are reserved for the states.
So California is saying, hey, immigration isn't explicitly mentioned in the Constitution, so it's our call, not yours.
Exactly. They're also using the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures.
They argue that ICE can't just detain people without a warrant or probable cause, just because they suspect they might be undocumented.
Okay, so it's a constitutional showdown.
It is.
The feds say they're in charge? California says back off, and Burbank's caught in the middle.
Right.
Has anyone actually won any of these legal battles yet?
There have been some court rulings, but it's a mixed bag.
Oh.
Some judges have sided with the federal government, others with the states.
Yeah.
It's a legal tug of war, and the outcome is still uncertain.
So no easy answers, just a whole lot of legal wrangling.
Right.
What does this mean for Burbank as they try to make this decision?
Right.
What are the real legal risks they're facing?
Well, the biggest threat is definitely the loss of federal funding.
Right.
The Trump administration has made it clear that they're willing to use that as a weapon against sanctuary cities. And remember, Burbank relies on millions of dollars in federal funds for everything from housing programs to infrastructure projects.
Right, we're talking about that Olive Avenue bridge replacement and a whole lot more.
Right.
Losing that money would be a huge blow to Burbank.
Absolutely. And then there's the risk of lawsuits.
Yeah.
The Department of Justice has already sued other sanctuary cities.
Right.
And Burbank could be next if they adopt a policy that the feds don't like.
So taxpayers could end up footing the bill for a costly legal battle.
Right.
That's not exactly what I want my tax dollars going towards.
And it's not just the city itself that's at risk.
Right.
Individual city officials could face personal liability too.
Yeah.
Remember that letter we mentioned from America First Legal? They're threatening to sue city leaders who implement sanctuary policies.
Wow. So Burbank officials could be putting their own careers and finances on the line with this decision. Talk about pressure.
It's a high-stakes game, no doubt. Burbank is facing a complex web of legal challenges, and the outcome is far from certain.
Okay, so we've covered the legal risks, the potential economic fallout, and the intense political climate surrounding this issue. But at the end of the day, this is about Burbank, its residents, and the kind of community they want to live in.
Exactly. This isn't just an abstract policy debate. It's about real people's lives.
Right.
It's about families who fear being torn apart, business owners trying to make ends meet,
Right.
and city leaders grappling with tough choices that will have a lasting impact on their community.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners in Burbank? What should they be thinking about as they try to make sense of all of this?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed and engaged.
Yeah.
Attend city council meetings, read the reports, talk to your neighbors, contact your elected officials.
Right.
This is your city, and your voice matters.
And don't be afraid to ask tough questions.
Yeah,
Challenge the assumptions, demand evidence, and hold your leaders accountable.
absolutely. This is a complex issue with no easy answers.
Right.
But by engaging in thoughtful dialogue,
Yeah.
listening to different perspectives, and demanding transparency, Burbank residents can help shape the future of their community.
This has been quite the deep dive.
It has.
We've explored the legal battles, the economic uncertainties, and the human stories at the heart of this debate.
Yeah.
We hope you've come away with a better understanding of what's at stake for Burbank and for the nation as a whole.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay informed.
Thank you for watching our My Burbank video. Please consider a channel membership to support us, or head over to our merch store where you can pick up some great items. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the latest videos, and please don't forget to hit that like button.